privilege to introduce these three ladies. And I really feel like I've gotten to know them over, the past day. It's like amazing how much can happen just kind of connecting with people in the hall in a few minutes. But I do have formal introductions and just want to give you some background because the work that these ladies do obviously makes them very qualified, excellent networkers in their own rights and in their own businesses. So first I'd like to introduce Regina Baker. We've seen Regina earlier today. Give a wave. Perfect. So Regina is a computer geek at heart. She loves everything about computers, how they operate as they do, and the limitless opportunities that software applications can provide. Her background is actually in procurement and information technology, and after being laid off due to downsizing, so maybe you were an accidental Jane at the start, and through the passing of her husband, to cancer in 2002. She had had various roles in computer technology that led her where she is today as the owner of Walmart, which is a full-service e-commerce software solution for work-at-home moms and the small business community, of course, all of us. So when Regina wanted to start Walmart, she and her partner really looked at how do they provide a full-service e-commerce solution for work-at-home moms, but without that huge price tag, so to make it affordable for moms as well. Her goal is to reach the masses with a complete and affordable e-commerce solution. Glad you're here, Regina. Thank you. All right, Lesley Spencer Pyle. Lesley, wave. Lesley is the founder and president of HBWM.com Inc. Network, which includes, and I love this, HireMyMom.com. What a great name. A website aimed at connecting talented at-home mom professionals with businesses that want to outsource their temporary and permanent projects and jobs. HireMyMom.com enables these professional women to market their skills, experience, and education to businesses who need reliable, motivated, and cost-friendly help, which is awesome. Lesley also is the founder and president of Home-Based Working Moms, which is HBWM, that she founded in 1995, which is a professional association and online community of parents who work at home and those who would like to. In addition, Lesley is the author of the Work at Home Workbook, your step-by-step guide to selecting and starting the perfect home business for you. And she's the creator of the very unique Work at Home Kit, endorsed by Dr. Laura. Awesome endorsement. I'm sure we would all love to have that. She has a master's degree in public relations from the University of Stirling in Scotland and a BA summa cum laude in journalism and public relations from Texas State. She's been featured in numerous publications, including Forbes, Entrepreneur, The Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Parenting, Dr. Laura's Perspectives, Family PC, and many others. She has 4 children, ages 20 months to 14 years, and has been working from home since the first day was born. Thank you for joining us, Lesley. And Mary, wait. This is Mary McDonald, and Mary is the CEO and the CTO of the McDonald Consulting Group, and she blogs about process improvements at her blog, ImproveMyBusinessNow.com. She's been helping companies streamline their businesses and implement management systems since 1995, when she incorporated McDonald Consulting, and she lives in Austin, Texas. Her mission in life is to have every process be done efficiently, with minimal or no negative impact to existing jobs, the environment, or the bottom line. She's the author of 5 books, awesome, including her newest book, Taming Procrastination, which I would like to read and must need to read. And she's a member of several technical communities in quality, sustainability, environment, and health and safety, and a frequent speaker at conferences and seminars. She recently keynoted at a conference in South Africa. What an amazing trip. And just returned from Orlando last week, where she spoke on process improvement tools. In addition to running a successful business, volunteering at her church and school, and working as a leader in several organizations, Mary still manages to find time to network, many times online from a hotel room. and her email address you'll have. So perfect. Thank you very much, Mary. And thanks to all these ladies. So I know you all have questions, but I thought we'd kick off with a starter one, and then certainly you all can chime in. But what I'd love to hear from these ladies first is, what do each of you think is the best place to network, and kind of what are your favorites and why?
Well, I think, is this on? Is it on? Let's check. No, it is.
There you go.
The on button. I think for a lot of us, if I work from home
for the association, Home-Based Working Mom, that basically was born out of the need for myself to network. When I started my first business in '95, I had a little baby beside me, so it wasn't like I wanted to go tote her around to all the networking events, but I wanted to learn from other moms and not start from scratch. You know, I had a lot of questions, and I knew there were other moms out there that must be doing the same things, not even necessarily moms, but women or even guys. So that's where the idea for that association came from, and it's been a tremendous help to me, and I know a lot of other moms, just to meet other moms, ask questions, learn from them, buy from them, that sort of thing. And then also the newer ways with Facebook and Twitter, and I know that they have been really door opening for a lot of people in regards to finding people that you would never meet, probably in person at events. You have to travel every day to meet these people, so that's probably the best places that I've found to network.
I agree with that. I do a fair amount of networking online, but I also try and network face-to-face when I can. And the rule of thumb I try to use is 2/3 of the time I want to network where my customers and potential customers are, and 1/3 of the time I want to network where my friendly competition is, just sort of so we can learn from each other. I can keep up with the tools, the tips, the techniques that other people are using, what's going on, but I also want to get my face in front of my potential clients. And so I try to do some face-to-face networking, even with the amount that I travel. If I'm going into a city, I'll look up and see who's having a meeting that week. You know, you can look those up usually in the local paper, and I'll go drop in on a local to them meeting, and I'll say, hi, I'm from Austin, Texas, I was in town. They're usually very flattered that I took the effort to go and find them, and I'll get to meet a bunch of new people that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. Next time I'm in town, I'll call them up and say, hey, I'm back in town, can we get together for, you know, a coffee or lunch or something like that? And, you know, more times than not, out of all of those contacts that I'll make, eventually somebody will say, hey, don't you do this? And when are you back in town again? So by putting a face and a voice to that, you know, they follow me on Twitter or they're LinkedIn or they're on Facebook with me, but by going that extra step and making that phone call saying I'm coming back to that area or I really enjoyed meeting you, I find that that really helps to move that along from an acquaintance to someone who considers you someone they want to hear from.
I do most of my networking online. I have done some networking in events or local meetings that they have, but the majority of it is online. That's how I meet most people. I met Lesley almost 10 years ago, and this is our first time meeting face to face. That's the best part of it. But the thing about meeting people online and social networking is keeping that relationship going. You may not talk every day, but you want to keep the relationship going. And I never felt like Lesley was a stranger, and I know I'm not a stranger to her. So that's the great thing about networking online, because you really build great relationships as well as offline.
Perfect, thank you.
And one other thought came to mind, and I know you'll probably do this too, but me with 4 kids, I'm always doing something kid-related, whether it's football games or the Mother's Day Out program or volleyball or drill team. So those always, and I don't look at them as networking opportunities, but they present themselves that way because eventually somebody asks what you do and that sort of thing. And then also at church, as you get to know people, the topic of what you do always comes up, and I found that I've gotten lots of referrals without even trying, just by meeting. I think being, who you are, being genuine, authentic. In fact, the girl that's going to help me tomorrow at my booth is a girl from church, and we just got to talking about what we like to do, and I was like, I could use help because I'm not going to be able to be there all day. And she's so excited because this is something she's wanted to do and just hadn't. So you just kind of never know where where things are going to lead.
Awesome, great resources. So I've got another starter question here that I thought we'd ask. Mary, what are your thoughts about setting up a system for networking? Systems expert?
And why was I picked for that question? If you look at my calendar has networking time blocked out on it. And In addition to that time, I'll network at other times, but I want to make sure that I don't forget to network every single week. And the way that I set up my system is I sort of do it in blocks. So I'm going to network with everyone I met at my September and October conferences on such and such a day. And then you're having sort of that same conversation, oh, you know, have you followed up and taken your test and found out which Jane you are from Jane Out of the Box? Or have you, you know, danced and got up and moved to the, you know, moving around? Or have you, you know, tried some of the techniques that you learned at the conference? You can do that with several different people because it's a really genuine question. I'm not saying it just to reach out and touch somebody. I'm saying it because, like, did you really implement anything yet? I'm really interested in that. And so I'll put that in place, but I'll do those in blocks rather than do a scatter shot. So if I'm talking to previous clients that haven't worked with me this year, or if I'm talking to potential clients that have never worked with me, or I'm talking with current clients, I have a very set message of what I'm going to try and deliver to them while I'm doing that networking. And on a previous client, it's usually, hi, don't forget I'm here and available if you need help. And, you know, to the current clients, it's usually checking in, you know, is there anything else I can be doing? Is there anything else my staff can be doing to make our engagement more meaningful for you? Is there anything that you think that's missing or anything that you think we're doing that's over the top and you'd like us to ratchet back on? So we're doing a status check there, and then for the potentials, of course, it's always trying to, hi, and did you know that, you know, this month only we have a special, or whatever it is to try and entice those people. But by having those on my calendar, and I know that Thursday morning at 10 o'clock I'm going to be doing that, I can then start thinking about it, you know, as the week goes on. And so by the time I'll open my calendar and write in the things, oh yeah, and I want to tell them that, or I have to call this person, or I'll put the names down of the people I'm going to call. So by the time I get there, it's a no-brainer. And then you just smiling and dialing, you know, and making those connections and that kind of stuff.
Ladies like to add? What about you guys? What questions do you have? Yeah.
Which one online is your favorite networking system? And if it's something like Twitter and you put yourself on Twitter, how do you get people to come to you? I mean, I'm probably the one, I probably know the least amount about these things than anybody here today, so I'm struggling.
There's 3 sites that I use. LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter are the 3 main that I use. LinkedIn I keep for very professional engagements. And so LinkedIn, in the LinkedIn terms, I'm what's called a careful connector. If I haven't met someone, or if I don't think we have anything in common, I will not accept that invitation. I'll archive it. Because the flip side is, you know, we can be talking and someone will say, well, can you refer me to Jody? And if I've never met you, then I was like, well, not really. She sent me an email once, but I have never heard from her again. I would feel uncomfortable doing that. So because LinkedIn has that referral component, I only link to people that I would be comfortable referring to. Then there's Facebook, which I use pretty much the opposite. I'm linked to everybody in Facebook, including like my cousin's kids. I mean, I just found out that one of my cousin's boys got kicked out of a not-to-be-named stadium for life. And I was like, what did you do that you got kicked out of that stadium for life? He was like, well, there was involved some language and some beer throwing. Oh, okay. You know, so that's like purely social for me, is I keep up with family and friends, and I play games with my kids on Facebook. And I do some business on it, but that's not the primary use of it. And then Twitter is sort of a hybrid between those, because Twitter, I follow people who have interesting things that I want to keep up on, 140 characters or less, and I will tweet a couple of times. Now, being efficiency, I like Twitter because you got to say it in 140 characters, and when I'm on Twitter, I can be on and off 10 minutes, 3 or 4 times a day, and have some substance to it. So I like Twitter because it's fast, I like Facebook because I keep up with family, and I like LinkedIn for professional. So I have 3 very different reasons for using them, but they all have their purpose.
Thank you.
I would say sort of similar. Twitter, I do use it. My only complaint with it is it's a little too overwhelming and you can get sucked in all day long if you allow yourself. So for me, and the way that you find people and people find you is when you get followers, you can see where they come from, decide to follow them. But you can also go to someone that you admire or that you do business with, or say I went to Regina, I know who she is, I know what she stands for, the type of person she is, so I might want to see who she follows and check them out. And I've done that a lot of times with people that I'm friends with or know in the business world, and find interesting people to follow. And then a lot of times they'll follow you back. So that's kind of how you build your Twitter base. And I will tweet, sometimes I'll go 2 weeks without it because to me it's just too overwhelming. But now I found a new tool that makes it a little easier. It's called Hootsuite. And you can submit tweets it'll send them out later. So I might pile up 10 at a time and it'll send them out one every hour, one every 3 days or whatever. So I can kind of check that off my list, make it my presence. But I'm not getting the networking of looking at other people's tweets, so that's the drawback. So for me, I think what works best in those three for me is Facebook. And I have my private Facebook account that I just use for my family and friends, that, personal. But for business, I have a fan page. And that's where you can create a fan page for your business. And that's where I speak to my business, and I'll talk about personal stuff, but nothing like, I don't show kids, pictures of kids and stuff like that I, don't want out there just for anybody to see. So that's kind of the way I use those two.
Regina?
I'm your Twitter-holic.
There had to be one.
I love Twitter. I love social networking. With Facebook, I'm more like what they were talking about. It's more of a social thing where we're talking to family or maybe some friends or what's really going on. I don't do a lot of business on Facebook because that application really doesn't present that. It's more of a relaxed atmosphere. But Twitter, I absolutely love Twitter. And to answer your question, when you were talking about, how do you get people to follow you and things like that, it's all about setting up a system to where people really know that you're on Twitter. If you have a list, if you have clients that you're talking to daily, make sure that they know that you're on Twitter. Make sure that it's in your signature file. If you are on forums, make sure that's in your signature file. It's just asking people to follow you. Or you could even say, can I follow you? I also, the reason that I love Twitter is the fact that I think it allows the person to be very authentic there. When you find out that, for example, Willie Crawford, which is a huge guru online, you find out that he likes spaghetti. Well, how would I have known that he likes spaghetti before that? And then have a casual conversation with him about spaghetti. And then he may say, you know what, tell me a little bit more about Wamkar. Tell me about that. And then I give him the concept of that. And then he goes, you know what, I have an audience for that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that that's what happened, but I'm saying those are the type of relationships that you can actually form on Twitter. And I would say that my business increased by 15 to 20%. Just by being on Twitter, because people get to see the real you. You're talking about, I always talk about what I want to eat, or what did you eat, because I may want to try that recipe. But it's all about letting people know that you're on Twitter. If you're sending out an autoresponder, and maybe you've got an e-course, let every message say at the end of it, follow me on Twitter. And just what Lesley was talking about. But you want to be careful with whose profiles you go into because they may not be a match for you. But just like she said, she goes to her friends or maybe business partners. Somebody that has the same interests. And go and look on their profile and connect with those people. So I love it. I'm a Twitter holic.
What's your Twitter ID?
Regina Baker is my Twitter ID.
And I'm Mary McD.
Lesley Pyle, E-Y, not I-E.
Tell me your name again.
Lesley, L-E-S-L-E-Y, Pyle, P-Y-L-E.
New followers coming, I'm sure. What other questions do you all have?
My question was going to be, well, you kind of mentioned it, but from a company, what do you put on there? Like when you tweet, what do you? I mean, I see people on Facebook. I really don't care what you do 24 hours a day. You know, that I have a girlfriend. She writes on there every 2 minutes. She's walking into Target. Okay, I don't really need to know that. But from a company standpoint, you know, I've got a Facebook. Well, our Houston Ad Co-op has a Twitter account. What do you put on there? Like when you tweet, like about your business, I mean, what do you put on there?
Well, basically, it depends on the individual. And most people don't break it down like this. It really depends on you, what you're doing. I'm the type of person that I care about what somebody else is doing because I want them to care about what I'm doing. It's the saying that they say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so the thing is, what is it that you want to say to people about your business? What do you want to say without selling them? People don't want to be sold. So once they get, and we're in that time now, this used to work several years ago, that you could just sell. But we're in the times now, whether people want to admit it or not, that people are very careful about who they do business with, and they want to be able to trust you. So if you're talking to them about the fact that you went to a baseball game and your team won, you'll be surprised how many people will tweet you back and say, oh my gosh, you're a fan? You know, and then you look at that person's profile. Look at their profile. See what they do. Is there a match in there somewhere? Start up a conversation. It's not so much what you're tweeting, it's how you're basically developing that relationship within the tweet.
It doesn't always have to be about business.
It doesn't have to always be about
Figure out a way to
business.
get it in there.
That's what
It really doesn't have to be about business, but also it's not really about you all the time. It's like taking the focus off yourself and giving that energy to somebody else. One of the things that I'm impressed about is Michelle's Jane Out of the Box. So I would go to Twitter and I would say something like, are you Jane Out of the Box? What do you know about Jane Out of the Box? So people are going to begin to ask, and then I'll put, at the end of that, I will put her Twitter ID. So people will begin to ask about that. She'll get that message, and she has to answer that question, not me. But it basically starts that conversation there. So then people are like, well, Regina wrote about that, and they're probably looking at her Twitter, and they're like, I want to follow her. You know, she seems so friendly. That's the whole thing. People want to connect with people who have substance. They really don't want you to sell to them. They really don't. If you show that you care and you show that you have this real personality, you're this real person, then you'll see your connection just building and building and building.
I was going to add to that. I think probably the biggest thing about networking is building relationships and not always looking at, I'm going to go into this event and see what I can bring out of it. But if you go in with the mindset on, you know, who can I learn about and who can I help, then, you know, those people in turn just automatically want to help you. And I know with Regina and Michelle, a lot of the people that I've known for a long time through home-based working moms are like that. They, you know, I've seen, you know, so many, they'll help so many people, and in turn, you just want to help them. So.
Another question, yeah?
Yeah, I agree with Mary. I use LinkedIn for my more professional, or I agree with all of you on that, for my editing services or a book I've just authored or whatever. How do you subtly offer that on Twitter without, quote, selling? And you're exactly right, I agree with you, but how do I get that out there on Twitter that I just have another book published, or my editing services are still available, or whatever?
I think that one of the things that you can do is you can ask people to celebrate with you.
Ah.
You know, if you say, woohoo, just have my book published, or, you know, woohoo, just finished my first draft. The book isn't published yet, but you start telling people that you're writing about it. You can do that. Or saying something like, you know, people read mine. I tend to post where I'm going and what I'm doing.
Yes.
So anyone reading my Twitter stream knows I'm in Houston today and tomorrow at the WBO. And so, you know, somebody wrote back to me and he said, and it's a friend of mine on Twitter, never met him. We're good friends, we converse all the time. He's in Kentucky. He says, you're at the World Boxing Organization? So, you know, I wrote back and say, no, women business owners. Now, he's in Kentucky. And I write back, I'm at the Humble Civic Center. Come visit my exhibit booth tomorrow. I'm writing to him, but the 1,005 followers I have all see that message. So even though I'm writing to one person, everybody else sees that message. So you can sort of work in where you are, what you're doing, how you're doing it as part of the content. It's the context, I think.
Right.
Rather than say, here's my blog and a link. My post might be, here's some thoughts on leadership. Well, if someone's interested on leadership, they'll click on the link. If they're not, they'll go, don't care, and go on to the next one. So post enough information that it sort of intrigues them, and you can link to great information, like here's where the book is published, or here's my new website, or things like that. You know, people will say, what do you think of the cover of my new book? Yeah. So you ask for opinion, and then you go, oh, he wrote a book? Oh, she's got a new article published? Oh, you know, and so it's a way to mention it in the context of, like, if you run into somebody in the grocery store, and they said to you, what's new? Whatever you would tell them is what you can tweet out.
And I was just going to say, I've written an article before where I'll mention or quote somebody, and then I can tweet, you know, this person's mention, and so it's not a way to say, here's my article, but here's a mention of this person, so it kind of reflects to them. But it's your article, so it's kind of a bonus.
Okay.
Another thing is that if you have a blog, you can actually set up your blog to where it'll automatically tweet all of your post. I do that.
I do
in terms of business, you know, when I want somebody to see a business post or something like that. So that's a cool way to do it as
And
well.
that's a good idea, because I do that with my travel writing blog and my travel blog. But on my editing services, it's a whole nother thing, and it's sort of like, okay, now I'm drawing a blank how I can weave that into that also.
Yeah, just be creative.
Yes.
You know, you know, we say creative, but it's sneaky.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be real creative with it
Okay.
to get that message out there, to get people really interested in what you're doing. You know, just
Thank you.
have fun with it.
I have a question. Where do you learn what you should do and what you shouldn't do? On Twitter.
You
Twitter,
can do
something like
what
that.
I did when I was first learning about it, is I did a Google search, Twitter's do's and don'ts, and that sort of thing.
Do's and don'ts, okay.
And I read articles, and I read Twitter how-to, you know,
Okay.
to learn the ins and outs, because the first time you get on there, you don't know what RT means, or FF, or, you know, all of that is like, what is all this? And so
Okay.
there are articles, plenty of them written. If you just
Okay.
Google Twitter or, you know, how-to, you'll find a lot of information.
So, could I ask a follow-up? Or related question? If you all were just starting out today and you really wanted to start social networking, where would you start?
Oh, that's easy. I'd start with all the people I've met at WBO 09.
Well, there you go.
I'd follow
Yeah.
Jane Out of the Box and Regina Bacon, Lesley Pyle, and Mary McDee and Felicia Slattery, and see who we are all following. Chances are that if you look at that, we're probably going to have anywhere from 20 to 80% overlap in the people we follow. And so if you like, you know, the kinds of things that we tweeted, and if you go to each one of our names, you can see the last 20 tweets. So you can read them all at once and say, is this somebody I want to follow or not? And I do that with every person that follows me. I'll go to their account and I'll read their 20 tweets. And if it's, I have this great new product, earn $1 million with no effort, and they've tweeted that 8 times, it's like delete, delete, delete. Whereas if I go to somebody, and sometimes I'll find someone, and all they do is they post inspirational quotes, and then I'll go back and I'll read the 20 tweets before that. And if I go back 60 tweets, and they've posted like 2 or 3 things and the rest of it is inspirational quotes, I have enough of those. I don't need to follow more people doing that. So it's not that they're a bad person, it's just that it's not a good fit. It's not a good fit for me and what I'm doing. So for you in the cruise line, I would type cruises, I would type travel, see who comes up, and then look at their tweets and see, you know, those are the industry people you're going to follow. Then look at the people you've met at conferences that you liked what they said and follow them. And there's tools like we had talked about, TweetDeck, where you can categorize people. So you can have cruises, family, you know, business associates, friends. You can make different categories, and then if you want to read it, you can just focus on that. So your brain isn't trying to figure out where to scramble things. It's already sorted for you. So there are tools out there that will help you, like, make sense of where you're going. But the first thing I did when I started out is I looked at people that I like to read their blogs. So I'll go and Twitter them and see if they have, you know, if they have a Twitter account, and I'll follow their tweets. So.
Any other advice? What other questions? I got a couple more.
Okay.
All right, so we're talking about saying what's really going on with you, and in Twitter, right, in the Twitter context, and really making it a conversation, not just in Twitter, but even in Facebook, and even in live networking. What do you say when you are talking specifically about your business and what you do to try to differentiate yourself to someone new that you're meeting? It could be live networking, it could be, you know, an event like this. How do you really differentiate your business when meeting new people?
You take it. No, you take it. No, you take it.
For me, I look at, you know, what sets me apart, what makes me different, and every business is going to be a little bit different. You probably all heard the term your unique selling point. So when I started my Home-Based Working Mom website in '95, there was only one other website out there that was anywhere close to what I was doing, and it's wham.com. And that was originally the name I had, and I was like, oh, somebody's already doing that. So I immediately went, and what I had envisioned and what she envisioned were different. So, but now, if you look online for work-at-home mom type associations or moms that work at home, there's like 300 bazillion out there. And so I think even now, you know, it's really important to see how are you different, and I think, you know, focus on your strengths, and I think most importantly, having good customer service and just being genuine with your audience and knowing that, you know, there's a lot of people out there and they don't all have to belong to your group. So there's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, I concur with everything that Lesley says, and one of the things that I try to do is I just tell people what I do, and if you've talked to me at any length of time, you know I'm really passionate about it. And so if people are attracted to that, that's great, and if they're not, it's probably not a good match for us anyway. I firmly believe in the whole concept of abundance, that there is, you know, way too much work and too many people that need to be taught how not to procrastinate and made more efficient than I could possibly do. So I'm only looking to work with the people who are attracted to what I'm trying to do. I'll tell them that, and if that's not a good fit, then I'm glad we found that out now.
I agree with both of the things that they said, you know, just basically setting yourself apart, being authentic when you go in, and actually listening to what a person is saying and seeing where there's a win-win situation, listening to what they have to say. You know, the listening is the most important thing, because a lot of times when we go into these networking events, we got the my syndrome going on. But if you really listen, you'll see where the connection basically happens. And so when you get to that point to where you're like, okay, here's my shoe in right here, you know, then you're just basically telling them how much you really want to support their business and you know, different tools that they can add. So it's basically setting yourself apart and being authentic and listening.
New questions? Are we feeling pretty complete? Okay.
Can I take one of you home with me tonight?
What I would like to do is ask the panel if each of you would share kind of like, what is your, if you were to wrap it all up, your perceptions of networking and kind of like what's your one best piece of advice?
The one best piece of advice for networking, I think if it's in-face networking, my number one piece of advice is don't sit with anyone you've sat with during that event. And, you know, I sat with people last night and I sat with different people today on purpose, and I'm going to sit with different people again tonight if I can. And that's not a comfortable thing for me to do. I want to sit with people that I know and people that I talked about and people that I can continue that conversation with. But at the end of the day, if I go home with 3 business cards versus 20 business cards, it's my fault. And so I think my number one tip on in-face networking is to sit with people that you haven't had a good conversation with before. My number one tip for online networking is a consistent presence. And Lesley mentioned using Hootsuite, and I use TweetLater. It's the same kind of tool. So you can get on and you can write multiple tweets and then say, I want to send it at this time on this day. And so when I was in South Africa, I was off the grid, I mean, way off the grid at one point in the trip. And I had just set up my tweets that said, Mary's in South Africa today, she's on a safari, let's hope she sees an elephant. And so there was something going out, even though I was nowhere near a computer. So people didn't forget about me because I was, quote, on vacation, on a business trip, doing something fun, because I had that set up. I use the system, whether it's, you know, TweetLater, Hootsuite, there's a ton of Twitter applications out there. So just keeping that consistency of presence, so those things are going out.
Did you mean to use the third person, or that's what you do on Twitter?
Well, no, I use the first person, but
I am on a safari today. Oh, okay. I was hearing you say Mary's on a safari today. Mary's.
Actually, at that I did.
Okay.
I wrote that Mary is on a safari today. Mary is on a safari today because I wanted people to know that it wasn't me writing. That I was out.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
But usually I say I, like everything that I have. And usually in Twitter, because you only have 140 characters, you're never even saying I.
Okay.
I'm writing here, networking tip. You know, I'm not saying Mary's networking tip, or I'm just, you know, I only have a certain number of characters.
I would say if I had to just have one tip, it would definitely be the building relationships and following up, because networking never happens with one interaction. It always takes, and I think the most successful networking relationships are when, like I said, when you take the first step to say, oh, I know what she does, and I just read an article that would really be, you know, right up her alley, or I met someone and this is what she does, and just keep, you know, a mental list of as many of those people as you can, and as you meet people, as you see people, give it to them, you know, push it towards them so that you're, you know, they see that you're wanting to help them, and I think that has been the biggest payoff as far as networking and building relationships.
Regina.
I think I already said mine. Listen, encourage, empower. Be authentic. You know, I think you said one, didn't you? And I'm talking
Please.
about all these different tips.
You have you've got this wisdom, share.
Just being authentic. You know, just go in being real. Be yourself, and people will embrace you, you know, and you'll embrace others. One of the things that I think is really, really, really important when we're networking now. We've been networking this entire time that the convention has been going on. And one of the things that we can do to really support each other is, you know, when we have speakers that are speaking at the front of the room, we need to smile and give them encouragement and clap and give them good energy. That's part of networking, because you know what? If Michelle is speaking at the front of the room and she sees me and I've got this huge grin on my face, then normally afterwards she's going to say, thank you so much for, you know, giving me that great energy. By the way, what do you do? You know, and then you form this relationship, because she's going to remember, this person supported me. What can I do for you? What can I do for you? And so that's the most important thing. And I know a lot of people think that that's kind of, girly or softy. And people will tell you that it is, but it's about building authentic, real, trusting relationships that last forever, because what happens is that you're referred over and over and over again. And I'll tell you, that's how Walmart was built. We never advertised. Never. And it's by building relationships and trusting relationships where people talk about you. They talk about you. They talk about, you know, your customer service and all of those different things. So it's all about, and I like that. To me, that's organic. It's like being in the search engines. It's organic. It's not paid. That's realness. So that's the power of networking. Make it real. You asked a question about the do's and don'ts and stuff of Twitter. Felicia Slattery had a guide that she put out several months ago. May even be a year now. But to me, that was the best one I picked up at that time. At that time. And then there's also Coach Deb and Warren Whitlock. They have a free handbook that you can pick up that's called the twitterhandbook.com. But Felicia's is really good because it's more layman terms. I like the way she walks you through it, and it's recorded. And she's talking, and you know, if you saw her last night, you see how energized she's awesome.
Okay.
So those are two that I recommend.
Okay. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you. Are there questions as a result? No? Well, I want to thank these three ladies. Thank you so
Awesome.
much
Thank
for your
you very
wisdom,
much.
sharing, helping the network.
Yes, thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thanks everyone. Praise God.